Manever I say ma PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV there, osia dem yopo.
To seek his thoughts on the issue.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that because it affects the Supreme Court, I have to be overly cautious, isn't it? Because I have been a victim of the Supreme Court's, let me say, invitation for contempt, which under very, what I consider to be very bizarre circumstances. I think what is happening in the country currently is sad for many reasons. Look, there are many very, very fine judges in the Supreme Court, undoubtedly. Just like other Ghanaians, there are very decent individuals there who want the best for Ghana. And sometimes when we speak about the Supreme Court in a collective term or in generality, it saddens my heart that those individuals also tend to receive the slur or the negativities that come across. And so part of what we should be doing when we discuss these things, and perhaps that will help the message gets to the people, the erring ones in the Supreme Court, is that we should probably start isolating them and scrutinizing them one after the other based on their decisions. Unfortunately, they seem to have been very smart in not presenting us individual judgments, but basically coming as unanimous at all times. And I haven't also seen in a long time any of those I consider to be very, very decent ones who care about Ghana. Not about NDC or NPP, but about Ghana. I haven't seen in a long time any of them being empaneled on some of the recent very interesting cases, which clearly also raises questions about what is the calculation and the mechanisms for empaneling? Who checks the empaneling? Is it right, given where we are now, is it right to basically leave empaneling of justices on cases solely in the hands of Chief Justice who is appointed by, let's say, the President, especially if there is a case in which the President has an interest? Ideally, in a democracy, once you are appointed, you are fortified by the rules under which you operate. So there should be no reason why you should, ponder to the whims and caprices of the person who appointed you. But as political scientists, both in Africa and elsewhere, have said over and over again, Africa's democracy, and to that extent, Ghana's democracy, appears to suffer from patron-client relationship. There are people who have been appointed and feel that because somebody appointed them, they will have to be beholden to that individual. And to be beholden to that individual is to, ponder to them, make things to please them, forgetting that your tenure may even extend beyond, that president's tenure. But let me just, for the sake of clarity, let me just make a few points on the question of separation of powers, because this is something that is at the heart of separation of powers. Now, there are three arms of government. There is the legislature, which makes the laws, approves budgets, and also conducts oversight over the actions and inactions of the executive, right? Then there is the executive that enforces the laws, that also appoints officials and commands the arms of security, the armed forces, the police, and so on and so forth. Then there is the judiciary that interprets the law and provides checks and balances and resolves conflicts to make sure that, things work properly. And there are checks and balances between all this. If you look at our constitution, I don't pretend to talk as a lawyer. By the way, lawyers are not the only ones, close to talk about the constitution. It's a political document as much as it's a legal document. If you look at our constitution, it is very clear that the framers recognize the independence of the judiciary, the independence of the executive, and then the independence of the legislature as well. By recognizing these independences, they also put in place mechanisms that allow certain interfaces in the course of the performance of their duties. And we also do know from previous cases that have gone to court in this country that the Supreme Court previously had affirmed that Parliament, is autonomous as far as the activities that go on within its remit are concerned. And so a decision from Parliament with respect to the locus of 4 individuals as far as their membership of their political parties, or whether they remain members of their political parties have crossed carpet is concerned, remains within Parliament until maybe a decision in Parliament is contested in the courts by way of constitutional interpretation, because interpretation then lies in the purview of the judiciary. What we are witnessing is not the same. And for me, as a public policy person, when I heard this thing yesterday, the first question I asked myself was, what problem is the Supreme Court intending to solve, because your decision must be aimed at solving a particular problem. I don't really see the problem. And the reason I wonder about that is that the speed with which the decision was made, the filing, the impaneling, and then the hearing, and then the verdict and everything, all these things cannot be divorced from the entirety of the decision. They are all part of the remit within which the decision is taken. And the reason that for me is important is that we have SAL, right? SAL has been in court for almost 4 years. A whole community, a whole constituency, so to speak, in our country have not been represented in a parliament for 4 years. And they have been in one court after the other, including the Supreme Court itself. And up to now, they have not still been represented. Now we are getting close to election. And then you have a situation where the Parliament of Ghana, following precedents, its own precedents, had made a decision that affects, the numerical strength of the parties in Parliament. And then one cries quickly, runs to the Supreme Court, and then gets an order that says the Speaker's order should be stayed. See, one of the things that the Supreme Court needs to be minded of is that you must ensure that your decisions are enforceable. Don't make decisions that will make you look ridiculous. That will also make people feel that you are losing your standing or your respect in society. How in God's Ghana is the Supreme Court hoping to enforce the decision in Parliament, for instance? Because within the workings of Parliament, any attempt by anybody, any institution to interfere could also be cited for contempt. And that includes even the Chief Justice. If you try to interfere, unduly in the work of Parliament, you could also be incited for contempt. And Parliament is also clothed with the powers to actually exact punitive measures against people who are cited for contempt. What is happening? We are gradually heading to a constitutional gridlock. And I think I have heard quite a number of people spoke yesterday on this matter after it came out. Even people who were vehemently opposed to the decision by the Supreme Court had asked that let us allow, let's calm down tempers, and let's make sure that we see this as a test for the country and find a nice way to overcome it. We must also avoid the possibility of letting egos get in the way of the performance of the institutions. But more importantly, as a political scientist, I kept asking myself, what do we need to do differently to ensure that in the now and the distant future, we don't have these situations occurring? And one of what I think we should do, which used to be the case previously, is that we must take a second look at the legal training that we have currently in the country. It used to be the case where to become a lawyer, you would have had the opportunity to take courses in other disciplines in the social sciences, right? You would have gone into sociology, philosophy, political science, economics, psychology, and all those things. And it was for a good reason. The reason also being that these disciplines actually speak to different dimensions of social life and human life. And so learning about them before building a profession allows you to understand how different things operate. Sometimes I ask myself, when I look at the decisions of the Supreme Court, whether these people understand sociology or understand our society and how societies are expected to operate. Especially also because Poly 101 in political science, matters of separation of powers are quite clear. And the first thing that I expect the Supreme Court to have done in this particular matter was to have referred Apejo Makin and his group to the point that you need to go back to Parliament. This is matter within Parliament. If you think that the Speaker doesn't have the power to make those decisions, then file the proper applications for constitutional interpretation. But if you just come asking one arm of government to stop another arm of government from performing its duties or from executing its duties, then we are sliding into a situation where if we don't take time, we may end up with a judicial dictatorship. And when that happens, you know what the potential outcome is. Look, some of the violence and some of the insecurity and some of the recklessness we see in terms of how people resolve their issues in our communities today are largely the result of the fact that people are losing trust and confidence in our judicial system. And when people lose trust and confidence in the judicial system, which is expected to solve conflicts for them, then they are likely to take the laws into their own hands. I am not, approving that, and I am not subscribing to that, but I am just saying that people who occupy the positions of trust or who have been mandated to perform certain functions need to be mindful of, one, the substance of their actions and the perception that emerges from their actions as well, so as to ensure that we hold the society firmly together. Other than that, we may be running into serious trouble. And if you look at the paneling of the individuals who made the decision yesterday, they are people who have been appointed by Nana Addo recently, really. And you ask yourself, on what constitutional provision were they standing to actually ask that the Speaker's decision should be stayed? Besides that, you also ask yourself, where did we get this new culture of everybody who sat in the Supreme Court case now agreeing? The beauty of the law is when you have people, even when they agree with different reasons, and all these things are written down and thrown into the public, and we all read and say, oh yes, they all agree though, but look at the different reasons they are all giving. These days we are just being told that unanimously this, unanimously that. And I think that it's not a good example for young people, and also for, the growth of our democracy, and particularly the growth of our institutions. And we need, as a society, to help our judicial system reform. If we don't do that, we all stand to lose. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're just joining us. We're discussing what happened in Parliament, the declaration of 4 seats vacant by the Speaker, and the Supreme Court actually issuing a decision yesterday telling the Speaker, stay the execution of that ruling you've made. Well, let me do a couple of comments before I go to Mr. Kojo Chumbuafo. This is an ifyada.
The EC is expected to be a neutral arbiter, but conducts and pronouncements of officials at the very top of the EC in the last couple of months have not been very helpful as far as its image is concerned. I know my once upon a time classmates at the University of Ghana, Bosman Asari, have had the chance on radio or TV to say that the NDC as a political party is a threat to Ghana's democracy. If you haven't... Yes, he was. You're surprised. If you have somebody who is supposed to be presiding over election matters, or somebody who is presiding over an important state institution, making an open comment in the public domain, basically saying that one of the major political parties in this country, just by demanding for fairness, is a threat to Ghana's democracy, that questions the suitability and the capability of that individual to be a neutral arbiter in a context in which the NDC is a party. We have also seen that leading up to this election, unless and until NDC makes a demand for something again in the interest of transparency, the EC basically behaves as if they are some imperial institution that are doing Ghanaians a favor. Ideally, by now, the register should have been something that is a public document that people can easily access. For some reason, we are heading into an election and our voters register is being treated as a gold or diamond in the belly of the soil for which people need to mine in order to get hold of it. 49 days to election, and we have just had a notice of poll printed. 49 days to an election, we have legal battles that are emerging out of some of the decisions and indecisions of the EC. With particular reference to Bernard Monan's case, and then of course our own case in the Amenfi Central. I worry that time is probably not on our side as a country. Granted that the Supreme Court or the court eventually decides that Bernard Monan's disqualification is null and void, what do you do to your notice of polls? What do you do to your ballots, papers that you were, or other materials that you may have printed by way of putting across public education and so on and so forth? are you going to go back and do balloting again? If, for instance, Bernard Mona's disqualification was turned upside down. I mean, so I think that the EC has basically left in its trail too many, traces of incompetence, incoherence, inconsistency, lack of clarity, and many debts on its own integrity. The elections ahead of us, just like the many that have gone before, are not child's play. It is about the destiny of this country, of ours. And it will serve us well if the Electoral Commission rises up to the occasion and demonstrates that it has no interest in who becomes the president, who becomes a member of parliament for any constituency, and that their role as an institution is essentially to make sure that they supervise Ghanaians who exercise their will as to who governs this country. Let me talk about ballot-related matters. The NDC have had a cause to raise concerns about ballot printing, and I was frankly surprised that the EC was proceeding to engage in ballot printing when some other issues that should have come before ballot printing have not been made publicly available. For instance, which institutions or which companies are printing the ballot papers for this country. And as Ghanaians, we shouldn't take that lightly. We shouldn't just assume that the EC can be trusted to basically procure any institutions to print ballot for us. I was involved in supervising some of the ballot printing houses in the last election, 2020 elections. And as you may know, or seen from the news media, one of the ballot printing houses, if my memory serves me right, I think it's InnoLink. Bizarre circumstances where we discovered over 1 million ballot papers, 1 million presidential ballot papers printed on the blind side of people who were observing the printing, but for the vigilance of the NDC agents who were there. And that kind of gets me thinking. Of course, the printing house gives some kind of bizarre explanations. How can you even say that you were printing those ones just in case there is a runoff? Which runoff has all the candidates on the ballot? So some way, somehow, those ballot papers were destroyed. But the question is, could they have printed this thing again elsewhere? On the blind side again of the political parties. And I want to say that because times have changed, technology has improved, and the printing technology in particular has moved on, we should not use the same mindset of 1992 to approach ballot printing, where a plate is developed by the ballot printing house, it is shown to the party agents, they are all on site, printing goes on, they check the first serial number, they check the last serial number, and then they think that everything is done. Could that plate have been exported elsewhere, maybe a subsidiary of the printing house, on the blind side of everybody, and extra ballots printed and given to a political party? That is a real possibility. So we need to look carefully at the mechanics of printing. I don't know if, for instance, Assembly Press will be printing ballot papers for this particular election. But if it will be, which is a government... Okay, good.
In the case of Assembly Press, David Asante...
So I was going to come to that. If they are going to print, if you recall, David Asante was previously the convener of is it Let My Vote Count,
yes,
right? That was organizing all manner of needless protests in this country against the NDC prior to 2016 election. He became the CEO of Assembly Press, the government press. 2020, Assembly Press was involved in printing ballot papers. Tell me that an appointee of Nanado was placed in charge of printing ballot papers for an election. Do you wonder why people talk about extra ballot papers that have entered ballot boxes elsewhere across this country? So I think that the Ghanaians must be interested in the houses the print houses that are printing ballot papers. But beyond being interested, we also need to question how they were procured, how some were selected and how others were not selected. Then we also need to look at the mechanics of how party agents observe the printing process. My own experience from 4 years ago was that rather than agents being on the machine to see what is coming out regularly, they were just in the premises, you know. And then when they start from the first serial number to the last serial number, they call them to come and check. But whilst you are not on the machine, whilst it's printing, anything could have happened. And so I honestly do think that for the fact that extra ballot phenomena had always shown its head in our elections, we should be asking, what is it that the print houses are not doing right? And these are private companies. Nobody speaks about them in the media. They don't come to talk about anything. They have been basically procured to produce ballot papers. But they are Ghanaians. They have partisan affiliations. They have interests. In fact, I would challenge all of us to be interested in the ownership of some of those ballot printing houses. Who owns InnoLink, for instance? Just go and check who owns InnoLink, in addition to Assembly Press that we know. And then check all the others. And you'll be amazed.
Who owns Back Press?
Well, I know you will come to that.
Yeah, who owns Back Press?
Check all those ones and check their politics. I mean, Back Press, for instance, check the various boards on which the current government have appointed people and check where the CEO is serving. And tell me that that individual is printing ballot papers, for us. The owner of InnoLink is a top government official, and he will be printing ballot papers for us. I think that we got to be serious, and this is where, I'm hoping that this sets agenda for a new conversation about a potential area in the value chain of the election where the stage could be set to change election results without people knowing what exactly happened. And we must be very, very, vigilant with that. I like what our party has been doing, the NDC has been doing in terms of checkmating the process. But it does appear to me that Ghanaians need to actually know a little bit more about why the demands for transparency are urgent and that we cannot take it for granted. Look, the truth of the matter is that we want NDC to win. NDC must win. Ghanaians should not see this as an NDC MPP matter. In fact, it must be an issue of MPP versus Ghanaians matter, because where this country has reached, if we don't rescue it and get a respite and reset it so that we can get onto a better path, and we make the mistake of allowing what is going on now, the driver's mate to basically come back and tell us that he is now campaigning against his own government on many of the issues that they have implemented, so we should give him power. If we make that mistake, then the Ghana we know is gone forever.
Prof, thank you. Thank you very much. On the matter of the ballot printing, I think there's a group called Election Watch Ghana. They actually have filed an RT application before the Electoral Commission seeking for some information, how they arrived at the printers that they are using currently.
We should give that kind of thing elevation.
Yeah.
We should speak about it a bit more. Let Ghanaians be aware that there is too much discretion, first of all, that the Electoral Commission is claiming to itself. I think that it doesn't hurt for the Electoral Commission to be proactive in putting a lot of things in the public domain on its own and letting people verify for themselves. And I am particular about ballot printing houses, and I think we should all take interest in it, because that layer in the value chain can make or unmake every effort towards 2024. And we should not just treat them as private citizens, private companies that are printing ballot papers. There is a whole lot of politics around it. And I think that we should be interested in making sure that we uncover the politics, put a scrutiny eye on them. For instance, I don't see why media houses cannot put their cameras there while printing is going on and be reporting directly to the general public. What is secrecy about printing ballots? The media houses should all have their cameras in the place and be reporting if they see something untoward. 4 years ago, all manner of hooligans walking around, the ballot printing houses, calling themselves national security, preventing people who otherwise, senior party people who otherwise were coming around to supervise what was, going on. We should have the media there. So also should we have the media in the Electoral Commission so-called strong room, and let the media actually carry live the arguments and the computations and the mechanics that are going on there, so that in the end, we don't leave, the whole thing into an opaque situation where the Electoral Commission can hoodwink everybody and come and announce about 6 different election results and yet claim that somebody has won.
Thank you.
Well, I saw in the news that Modi and Fitch had upgraded Ghana's economic standing, and I saw that government officials and our friends in MPP were jubilating over this, claiming that it's a sign that the economy has started responding to some of their interventions and policies, and that might give Ghanaians a sense that they can be trusted with power. First of all, it's ironic that those who got us to the very base of things jubilate when somebody says that, oh, it looks like you have improved a little bit. If you are that capable and you are that competent and you have what it takes to transform the economy and improve the lives of Ghanaians, then we shouldn't have even gone to the base in the first place. We shouldn't have, experienced the kind of economic malaise we are experiencing. We should have rather seen an improvement from where they took off in 2017, where under the leadership of John Mahama, the country was before they took off. But as we know from, everything that is happening in this country, they have taken us back several. The most commonly cited example, CD to dollar, for instance. 4 cedis to $1. Now it's getting to 17 cedis to $1. So here is my comment on, since you say it's only 5 minutes, here's my comment on the Moody's upgrade, which is very simple. How has that changed the price of things in our markets? Moody has upgraded you. It says that your economy is bouncing back. That's fine. But has that changed Kinky from being 5 cedis back to where it was in the Pest West? Has that changed what the price of a bag of rice is? Has that changed the price of tomato, a bucket of tomato? Has that changed the price of any other thing? The real economy for which people will be deciding in 2016 is in their pockets. The real economy is not in some international, rating here and there. Those things are languages to investor communities who are looking for places to put their money. But the people who cast their votes, the Ghanaian people who cast their votes, people who have lost their jobs because businesses have closed down. I can count several, small-scale businesses that have closed down between 2017 and now. And when we say businesses closed down, the image it evokes is that, somebody just closed his shop. But think about the people who were working there before. And think about the families that depend on them. And think about what they will go through. So one person may have lost a job, but maybe a family of 10 have basically been pushed into abject poverty. Within the last 7 years, the middle class in this country that was gradually building up, that was becoming a bit buoyant, has become a very precarious middle class. People wonder why they are quiet. They are quiet because clearly they have all fallen flat, and they are basically on one more press to get into, to get below the so-called middle class line. The people who were mobilizing and they were demonstrating during your mama's time, they've forgotten that the man they were demonstrating against is also the man who had created a favorable economic environment for them to have done better and even have the governance environment to go out there and express their displeasures. Now you have another government that has basically sapped out every energy in you in terms of your economic wealth. And what am I talking about? Your haircuts, people who have invested in government instruments. What we have been told when we were students in sixth form economics, was that the safest instruments to put your money in were government bonds and all kinds of government instruments, right? Today in Ghana, we have been made to realize that if you put your money into any government instrument, you will be told somewhere along the line that the government itself has mismanaged the tax money. It doesn't have enough money now, so it's coming for yours. And that is what we have done with the so-called debt restructuring.
And of course, thank you, Prof. You have, sorry, but 5 minutes each. 5
minutes came so quick.
let me just go to the key rating drivers. This is key rating. Well, Fitch has been explaining exactly why they've decided to do the upgrade. The first one is Eurobond exchange concluded. Since Ghana has successfully concluded a debt exchange for its 15 outstanding non-performing Eurobonds, including the IDA partially guaranteed notes. So this has to do with then it's a PENDREAM TV. Now so far so good. Say open online portal e wo Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.